Hello, everybody. Toma, Sojonky, Verico, Paragon Mortgage Group. I'm here with Mark Ballard from Remax Masters Realty. It is April the 9th, 2020. Quite an eventful year, to say the least. We're just touching base with each other. We thought we'd do it in this format with coffees in hand, no alcohol today, and just get up to speed on each other's respective businesses and what that means to you. So, look, nobody cares about mortgages. Nobody wants a mortgage, right? People want the keys or they want money. So let's start with you. I want to know, like we knew, being in the same realm as you, that the first quarter of this year was looking quite strong in the real estate market. But what sort of has happened with, let's talk about the North Shore real estate market, or however you choose to report. What's the market been like just before and now during the COVID-19 pandemic?
Well, I'll take you back just very quickly back. Since the foreign buyers tax came in 2016 and 2017, 2018, 2019 were very, very dismal years as far as volume is concerned. Okay, we had a couple of hot markets. The hot spot markets were more in the affordability range. The upper ranges were very, very dismal as far as volume is concerned.
I remember, yeah.
In prices was kind of inevitable, I think, with all of the taxation, the foreign buyers, the empty nesters, all of the different tax, barrage that we're getting from the provincial, federal, as well as even the municipal governments around. So that set the stage for quite low volume. Having said that, the fall, the very last quarter of 2019, we started almost doubling the volume, which it was so low before that even doubling it wasn't getting toward the balanced market.
Yep.
And yet this spring has been, the January, February, March market has been outstanding volumes across the Lower Mainland, which is good. And when we say outstanding, we're still in that sort of balanced market scenario. And I think the stats for the latter part of March was such a strong month in a statistical way, the first half of the month, that it still showed strong for the whole month.
Yep.
So it won't be, the market's still out as far as what we'll be able to report until we see April. Now, having said that, some of the things that are happening in West Van this month in April, we've a third through the month, and we've had 5 sales as opposed to sort of 50 last month. North Van, similarly, we've had about 18 sales where we've had 80 sales last month. Okay, the West Side is showing 10 sales when it showed 80 last month.
Yeah.
So I think everybody is kind of really coming to grips with this COVID thing, how to get out there and buy when they're not touching, when they're not getting belly to belly, I think is probably the biggest obstacle we have.
Yeah, and how are things different in your world in terms of the home buying process? We're all hearing sort of anecdotally about virtual tours and things like that, but break it down for us. If you've had any sort of recent transactions from tip to tail, what's it been like for someone trying to buy in this environment?
I think for the older crowd, it's tougher because they're not as tech savvy as, say, the under 40 or under 50 group. I think the under 50 group and maybe under 45 group are so much more comfortable with dealing online that I think those people are prepared to put more weight into stuff like your Matterhorn and your Zoom and your digital virtual tours and having 3D virtual floor plans and things like that. I believe that group is way more of a dynamic buyer. What we're seeing is most of the sales coming across are in that affordability range, tending towards the lower end of the spectrum, condo sales and first time, or I shouldn't say first time home buyer market, but in that lower, more affordable range, which typically tends to be a younger demographic.
True. And, you know, I guess from a different perspective, in a sense, like buying your first home is a terrifying and exciting experience, but going way back, zooming way out, it's sort of a low risk move when you're just starting out at the bottom of the property ladder. I mean, time has typically been on the side of the real estate owner / investor. So I guess those kids can take more of a leap of faith, notwithstanding, you know, how comfortable they are with the technology. I saw a younger realtor put up a poll on Instagram recently, and he said, would you actually buy a house on the basis of a virtual tour? And to my surprise, you know, take the stat for what it's worth. 45% said yes. I mean, like, you know, put down a deposit and actually write an offer, and then we'll talk. But to me, it was interesting.
I see the logistics of it, that more of that group are prepared to offer without seeing it, without being sort of right in the property. But I think too, that is a way, once you've got an offer established, you've negotiated it, having a subject viewing, and then doing that viewing in a very protected fashion, I think is kind of an interim step from this, you know, going totally virtual. So
right.
Are you seeing pre-qualifications? Are you seeing people applying for mortgages? I know you're very busy now with refinances and things like that. What are you seeing in the purchase market for mortgages?
So for the purchase market and mortgages, I think there's a couple of different camps. The first one that I do want to speak to briefly are the folks who wrote offers, let's just say before the end of March, however long ago that may have been. And there is this quite stressed out camp of buyer who has now a subject-free offer, financing was approved, and now they're laid off. And for quite some time, that was actually a bit of an elephant in the room with lenders. They're seemingly not addressing it directly, but then near the end of March, there was a pretty uniform policy that came across multiple lenders where they were saying basically, if as of the end of March, you had a subject-free offer, like you had removed your financing condition, and if you had a transaction that completed on or before September the 30th, they were not going to reopen the file. They would have considered you approved and they weren't going to re-underwrite the file, particularly if you had been making use of CMHC or any of the big three insurers to insure your mortgage from default. So that was almost a standardized approach across the board with all lenders as far as insurers were concerned. So if you're 20% down or less, you know, under $1 million, and you're relying on CMHC or Genworth or one of those big three insurers, if you are almost surreally, if you are unemployed at this time, they will still honor the approval and they'll fund the transaction. However, as of April 1st moving forward, they're going to want to see income documents up front with the application. So as a mortgage broker or any person acting on behalf of a lender, they're going to want to say, we need a job letter, we need your pay stub, we need it to be extremely recent, and we're going to verify all that before we even consider your application moving forward. And I'm seeing other lenders, it's a little bit more checkerboard, but they'll actually ask for another pay stub, for example, just before they fund. So they're being quite vigilant, and if people should happen to be laid off, they're going to do everything in their power reasonably to see things go through. But if they're having to rely on EI as income to the extent that they can, they have to rely on that. But for all intents and purposes, they're not going to use EI as income.
Well, it's a very chaotic period. I know that when it comes down to the mortgage funding and people getting laid off, it's an amazing stressor.
Yeah, it's crazy time, and you see that right down to the appraisals, as I'm sure you've already experienced firsthand. All of the lenders across the board now have adopted a change in policy where your appraisal is not going to physically set foot in the property. They will take pictures of the exterior. They'll take pictures of the street scene like they always do. Wherever applicable, they'll actually ask the client or the listing agent to draw the blinds so they can actually look through the window, like if it's a detached home, and just get a feel for the general condition of the property. Then they'll rely on the listing agent or the homeowner to take photos and videos of every room of the property, and they can rely on an exemption that they've activated the appraisers in order for those appraisals to stand up. So that's just an example. Lenders are now accepting, more lenders I should say, are accepting digital signatures, whereas up until very recently, like right now, it was still a bit draconian. A few of the lenders are still insisting on what we refer to as a wet signature with a pen. So print it out, sign it, scan it, send it back. Whereas so many of us are beginning to adopt, like you smart realtors, we're starting to adopt things like DocuSign and be able to turn around those fundamental documents so much more quickly. Because the only real formal documents in the process are always at your lawyer's or notary's office when it's time to sign for title for the property as well. And even the LTSA and even the Law Society are now scrutinizing, if not partially implementing, scenarios in which you can do a virtual signing in front of somebody in a camera. Or they're sort of letting go of the whole wet signature thing. And I guess, are you seeing stuff in your business that you would like to see stick around as a result of the adoptions that have been made here? I mean, I want to see everybody sign digitally across the board. I love it.
I do. I remember way back, and you probably do too, being that you've been involved in this business for such many decades as well. I remember when the fax machine came in, and we had
the roll on the rolls. Oh my God, and that stuff would go yellow after a few months. Oh, it's terrible.
I remember those, and for the longest period, for that period, lawyers said no way, they'll never take a fax document. Lenders would say no way. We couldn't take a fax document.
Yeah.
Real estate, we had 5 NCR copies that you had to sign hard because you had to print through 5 different copies of these NCR forms. It was crazy, but after a little while, the fax machine, everybody said, oh yeah, that fax machine is, is perfect. So
now a scanner is like an inconvenience. But now, can you imagine before copiers, like writing things out in quadruplicate or whatever? Like, oh my God. Anyway,
it was amazing.
Yeah.
I think the copier, the fax machine, now the scanner, and even the scanner becoming somewhat antiquated. And now with the DocuSign,
this is a scanner, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually create PDFs on this thing now, not just photos.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the law profession, LTS, I think they're coming into the 21st century with this idea that, well, it was just like the fax machine back in 1984, whenever we first got our fax machines. So
yeah,
I think those are really going to be, and getting the lenders out of the draconian past as well. I think those will all be things that will be remembered and will be the legacy of this crisis. That will be a bonus to us